So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Blue White Robotics' roundtable session on Has COVID paved the way for disruptive technology to tackle farm labor challenges? We certainly think so, and we're interested in hearing your thoughts today. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. Please do contribute to the discussion, be as interactive and as assertive as you want with your questions or your comments. We're here to learn. We're here to learn from you, and hopefully we can all learn something from today's session. One other little piece is please update underneath your name right there. Also put who you're with. That way we know where to direct the questions to or where they're coming from. Also, please do keep your webcam on. It's the whole reason we're here is to meet each other, so keeping it on helps us know who's talking. And also, if you do have a question, just mention who you are as you say it. That way we know where to look and where to answer as well. Should be fun. Once again, please be interactive. Please have fun with it. My name is Adam Fine. I'm the U.S. Business Development Manager for Blue White Robotics. I've been with the company for about 5 months now. I joined from one of our technology partners, Dropcopter, a pollination drone startup, and I entered into the startup world about 7 years ago from the food service industry as a chef. I love food, and food has always been a big part of my life and an inspiration for me. So that's kind of my background. And now, Alon.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alon Asher. I also love food, but I don't make it. I'm the US General Manager of Blue White Robotics. My background is from the Israeli Air Force. I spent many years on developing autonomous systems and have also a vast experience in the startup ecosystem. And thank you for joining us.
So Blue White Robotics is a robots as a service company. We connect growers and permanent crops with the best of agriculture technology directly through our platform. We aim to increase efficiency and resilience by increasing the utilization and availability of their tractor systems and other technologies and equipment. The biggest thing our growers tell us is important to them is worker safety. Many of them have workers that operate those tractors upwards of 12 hours a day, exposed to a lot of chemical spray or heavy equipment, and we aim to make that a safer operation through our platform. Our platform controls multiple vehicles, air and ground, all interconnected in a closed loop through our platform, making the data they collect readily accessible through the platform on mobile, desktop, or tablet.
Our flagship product is our autonomous farm. It's built in by those 3 pillars. The first one is our autonomous tractor. It's a kit that we can install on any existing tractor and execute multiple tasks with it autonomously, whether it's spraying or mowing or disking. The second one is the operation platform that Adam described, enable one operator to run multiple vehicles at the same time, collect data and distribute it. And our approach is end-to-end service, while our teams working closely with the growers and we're doing on-job training until the growers team can operate those systems and technology itself. So that's a little bit about us.
So for today, these are the topics that we'd like to hear your opinions on and share a little bit about. One is the uncertainty of labor in the industry. Another is the timing right now. Is it the right time for technology? Is the tech mature enough? And what can be done with regulation? So with any part of agriculture, labor is possibly the biggest thing we always talk about. Uncertainty of labor was especially true for COVID-19. We spoke with upwards of 20 growers on the West Coast, and they all explained to us that with the H-2A visa program shut down, border closures, worker availability was at its worst, and crops went unharvested sometimes, and the issues with the amount of just restrictions on the labor just made it almost impossible. So how are you guys addressing these challenges, and how are you building resilience in your operation? Somebody. Livia, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the regulation topic. I think right now it's probably the biggest challenge to overcome, in my opinion. I mean, with my company, we take care of localization solutions for drones and vehicles, and we see that as the biggest roadblock for this kind of devices. Now, there is some work that has been done for drones in Europe. For those who don't know me, guys, I'm calling from Italy. My company is Swiss. And there is some work that has been done in the drone segment. But for vehicles, I hear more and more our customers complaining or looking at regulation as really the biggest challenge to overcome. I don't know what other guys think about that. And concerning labor, obviously, I mean, we're also talking with a lot of companies in the US, and it seems like, I mean, I cannot talk for direct experience, but what I hear from them is like there is so much uncertainty, even in normal times, that COVID has been accelerating some kind of a process towards automation. And that's my feeling, because it's really probably what's creating the most problems at the moment in the market.
Anyone
I
else
don't
have
know
some
if there is
thoughts?
someone who agrees.
No, thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm Richard. I'm based in the UK, so I'm actually a grower, and in the UK we got big problems with labour coming at the moment, partly because of COVID, and partly because I don't know how much you follow it. We've got Brexit, so we've actually left the European Union recently, and a lot of our Europe for the last probably about 10-15 years has come from Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, Romania, and those routes have been restricted. So we're now limited to 30,000 workers coming in each year. And there's going to be a massive problem in the UK in the next few years because the government's trying to restrict immigration, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And basically, UK people are not overly interested in picking fruit. They tried it this year with COVID to try to push people into picking fruit, the unemployed, the young people. There's a massive take up, but people only last like 2-3 days, and it just didn't get on with the work. So my view is robotics is the future of fruit picking.
And Richard, which crops are you growing?
We actually grow strawberries and cherries, are kind of our bigger crops. But I know there's a lot of work being done with strawberry picking. There's very little been done with cherry picking at the moment. So I'm actually really interested in that, those sectors taking that forward.
Certainly.
Did you see any change with UK policy or technology adoption due to COVID? For example, here in Israel, few regulation agencies actually limit restrictions and enable technology company to do more, like drone deliveries in urban area, the things that Blue White Robotics did, with the help of the government accelerating processes due to COVID.
I think the answer to that is probably no here, if that makes sense. I don't think technology is just slowly coming through. People are trialing it this year in this country. If anything, we're probably slightly behind the curve. I know Israel's quite advanced, the US is quite advanced, and we're a bit behind the curve in that.
So, Janae Meiser, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So Janae Meiser, United Farmers of Alberta. So we are a farming cooperative out of Canada, and we represent growers across Alberta in the broadacre cereals pulses space. And Richard, you're not alone. I would say the adoption of technology is definitely behind from the grower perspective. And as we saw the implications of COVID, we didn't necessarily see huge advancements. We did see some more interest in technology. I think the uncertainty, you see a lot of our growers in our space look at autonomous tractors, for example, from a GPS driving, those types of things, but they still want to remain, they're not fully autonomous. They still want to remain sitting in that driver's seat. And that is, one of the things from an adoption perspective. It really is the uncertainty and the trust in the technology that we're seeing a bit of a slower pace in pickup, even when it comes to precision agriculture or even ag technology platforms, because of the uncertainty due to weather, due to different impacts that could impact their crops. So it is a bit of a challenge. We see the challenge in the industry and the need and the right time to introduce. Though I think there is also a shift in culture, and as we see the different demographics and more of that research and technology, the science and technology behind autonomous and what it could actually drive, growers are still really focused on ROI. So if you can't show it, it becomes a bit of that cart before the horse. And if you're investing in it, what's your immediate return? Or longer term, there's a return, and identifying that, it's creating time. It's also a bit of that fit for use. We've had some growers that have used drones, bought them for fun, and then tried to apply the technology to their crops, and then threw them in the back of the truck and said, well, it's in a million pieces now, so I'm never going to use one again because it doesn't really fit for the application from a durability perspective. Obviously, it wasn't necessarily what they were, what it was intended for, but that was their first experience to say, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And now they've thrown it out because it wasn't as effective as they'd hoped. So anyway, it's just a little bit from the Canadian space, but we do think the time is right, and it's really about educating and shifting that culture and making sure that we've got that right next generation, who are quite honestly more tech savvy and more understanding and connect. And it really is about driving the right decisions with that data and managing their operations better. So we've got a mixed bag of response to technology, and I would say a slower adoption in that space.
Thank you for that. Could I ask one question? What do you think is generating the distrust in the system, and what might be done to alleviate that? If they're still wanting to sit in the driver's seat of an autonomous tractor, something's missing there, because the whole point of the autonomous tractor is you're not sitting there. So what do you think is it like an insurance issue? Is it a comfort with the confidence of the navigation? What is it?
It's to your point, it is comfort, and it is, we're not actually doing anything if I'm not sitting and watching it. And they're not doing anything. A lot of them are going down one way and they are doing the pivot and the turn. But it is a bit of that comfort in that demographic that needs to transition. And it's about education and showing them the capability, a bit of the art of the possible, because they're still holding on a bit to that. This isn't really farming if I'm doing it from my kitchen type thing. We've got a lot to drill into on that, but sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so nice, thanks for I think those are good points you made, Janae. So, Adam, so I do technology market research. So, my response is going to be a bit different. I don't think it's just a strictly an agriculture issue. When I look at technologies being adopted from an organization perspective across industries, whether we want to, it's fair to say, agriculture, specifically, farm and ranch, are small businesses or not. I mean, they're very sophisticated often, but the number of employees is perhaps fairly low depending on the nature of the business operations. But we see similar things in retail and things like that. Where I'm going with this is, I often see, small businesses in terms of the number of employees don't have lots of sophistication in terms of technology enablement of those people, whether it be a retailer, small manufacturing, which agriculture kind of fit into that. They put more into people than into the technology. And technology is kind of very simple, or maybe back office things, but I think there's that issue. So it's not just strictly an agriculture issue that has to be overcome. It's much more across other industries.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And Jason, do you feel, but don't you see as a trend that things like COVID give you no other alternative? Also for the retail, it's very similar actually to ag. When you have pandemic like this, and you used to have 10 employees, although you need 20, you have 10, and all of a sudden, even those 10 are not coming to work in the farm because they were quarantined, so you have 2. And after getting this experience, you understand that you have to change. And probably a lot of retail guys also have this experience when the government told them, like, you can't open your store because of the pandemic. So don't you see this trend accelerating the adoption, or like give you no other alternative?
I do, and I see some other hands raised, so I'll just make my point. So I do agree that COVID is giving more firms, more organizations a burning platform. They got to do something, or they're gonna, it's like they have to do something, or they're not going to continue on. I think though it gets into what is going to be to get them to further spur on in terms of action, because they will have several actions that they can take. What's the I think Janae talked about the ROI. Like, what's going to be worthwhile to spend that amount of money, that amount of effort to actually spur that? Because if they can get something that's half as more easy, half as much money, they might go down that road as well, which means it's not automated. So I do think that there is a bit more of a burning platform due to COVID.
Guillermo, I saw a hand there. Last question on this one before we just shift to the next topic, if that's all right, guys.
Sure. So I'm co-founder and CEO of SpaceX. This is a startup based in Peru. We're working with blueberries, avocado farmers, big companies producing fruit worldwide, and also local companies, agro-exporting companies. So what we've seen with COVID is no fall of demand at all. First, it was uncertainty, as it was in the whole market, but then the demand for this type of high value nutritional food just increased. So what it really affected the industry was how many people can you get in the buses to go to the farm, and because of COVID restrictions. So you have more cost in transportation, which actually was a very strong cost in the whole wage of the person. So that was an issue. And then the other issue now is regulations. I think in Latin America, where a lot of these fresh produce is produced, there's a lot of national laws passing that are protecting the low-income worker. So a lot of more socialist approaches to the economy, and this means higher wages, more protection, which basically takes all the flexibility and the advantage in labor that the region had. So now you see farmers looking for alternatives on how to, or maybe ways of how to improve labor efficiency. Now you see that need driving technology adoption, such as drones for scouting, or maybe some automated machines to do some part of the work. Although labor is still cheap enough to prevent fully automation in the fields, but we see a higher worry about how to make labor more efficient in these markets.
So just to repeat back to you, you're saying that, at least in South America, you're seeing regulation really being a driver towards pushing towards autonomy adoption.
Because
right?
It's making the cost of labor higher, exactly.
Makes sense. All right, so that actually feeds into our next topic here, which was the timing. We've already sort of touched on timing a bit, but growers, as we see it, are being forced to make a really tough decision here. Do they invest more into infrastructure with, sanitation stations, more housing, better ways to transport, more vehicles to do that, or do they invest in technology, new technology, maybe technology they've heard about that someone else that down the road is using as well? And what is the first step in the adoption process that you see as effective? Because there are many ways you hear about new technology. Maybe it's a demo, maybe you see an ad, maybe, like I said, when your neighbors has a system that they're using. But solving that adoption process is really the key. And we want to hear from you guys what you think is the best way. Alexa, I haven't heard anything from you two.
Yeah, I was just going to raise my hand. So Alexa Cubbage, Dairy Farmers of America, we're the largest dairy cooperative. in the US, seen robotics both on the parlor side as well as, in field from some of our farmers growing their own feed and perspective of that. But in terms of adoption, what we've seen work really well is where the farmer can either see it in the field being piloted and they understand the translation of what data is coming off of this technology, what it's being used for, and the analytics and data that they can get back from that to make decisions and drive decisions on farms. And it does help. I have to say that farmers have the best social network that I've ever seen. It can beat Facebook any day in my book, and they talk to each other. So seeing how they talk to each other, getting into those channels and connecting with them can really help drive adoption. And we've seen that work very, very well in many different ways.
Yeah, that's the number one method we seem to have work is the in-person approach, definitely. Yeah, Guillermo, please.
Sure, and definitely I will agree with Alexa, and I agree with Alexa, but I also think that the timing or the moment in which you go to sell and who are you reaching to are critical. So in our case, we started selling everything we had at any time of the year, and then we realized we needed to sell specific parts of the product in different times of the season. You cannot we could not sell the use case of harvesting but when the harvesting is ending. So that kind of calendar approach in different latitudes, I think it's better to just get the message through and increase the adoption rate.
Guillermo, I have to agree with you. I think one of the things that, from a technology perspective, is the time when you're bringing it and showcasing it. They need to see that it works, and reference to Alexa's point, their neighbors tell neighbors, and if somebody else has proven and it's working, that really is their recommendation and their place of support for trying new technology. Guillermo, to your point, I think there is one thing that I don't know if we look over, but egg in specific areas, specific to broadacre crops or any, I'm not as familiar, Richard or Guillermo, with the fruit crop variety or row crop variety, but from broadacre crops, our members really have one business cycle a year. It's not like they can try something, change it, and adopt it to see what the results are the next day. They have one full year business cycle to go through. And so it does also take, from an adoption perspective, many years of data from a business cycle. They need 1 to 3 years worth of data to actually drive valuable decisions and make business decisions on. And I think that's one thing that we need to keep in mind, that there are multiple business cycles that they need to go through to validate that it's driving value for them.
Livia, before we go to you, I saw Richard had something to mention.
Just really to agree with everybody else, really. I think seeing the technology in the field will make people talk about it, chat about it, and that will drive it through an industry. And just to pick up a bit on the point about fruit against what do you call it, open field, we're also arable farmers. We haven't got a drive to push technology or robotics in arable farming because our labour costs are quite low compared to our costs. And our field's scattered out. We farm on the west side of London. So we've got tractors everywhere. We've got people walking across fields. Technology and driverless tractors around here will be an absolute nightmare because you'll drive to the field. Yeah, you set the machine up. It's only a small field. It'll be done in 10 minutes. You have to move the next one. And so you might as well sit the machine and do it. Whereas the labour saving in fruit picking technology over here, I think, is vast because that's a true cost. And we know we can't compete with the likes of Chile. And it's interesting to see that Chile and Peru have the same, having labour costs rising. We're 20 years further down that cycle, if not like 50 years further down that cycle. We've got massive problems with it and we can't get the labour. It's not a case of the cost of it, they're just not there.
I think, Richard, also we still have a long way until we all the robotics solution for harvesting, which is the holy grail, will be in the right performance and cost. But there's a lot of infrastructure effort and adoption effort that can be done today with the current technologies to speed things up. You feel more comfortable in adopting your harvesting robot that will be commercial on 2024 once you'll see more and more robotic adoption in the field for other tasks that they are easier to grasp and easier solutions, in easier environment.
I think that's dead right. My other concern is I think the way we grow crops will also need to change to suit robotics, particularly in orchard crops like cherries. Because if you've got like a round tree, it's very hard to get the robot in the middle. You need to learn and train that tree to be like a wall of fruit so you can then pick it. And cherry trees take 4 years to come through to production. So we almost need to work out on a grower level, a growing structure that works with robotics. There needs to be adoption or collaboration between growers, to plant the structures now that robotics can pick from. And that's the thing that I find really interesting.
That's a very crucial point, and we discuss it with all of our growers, where we implement our autonomous technologies on setting the expectation. We prefer to under-promise and over-deliver rather than say we can do every condition 100% and then let them down. It's all about understanding the 25% that you can provide ROI on day one, and to mark in the beginning those 4 rows that there's no way that the autonomous tractor could handle because everything is closed and there's a fence and there's beehives there. So, it's better to set this expectation in the first place and get us like a success story, and also and then, the technology will adapt to your field. And after you create some confidence, you'll adopt the fields to the technology a little bit. So we can change a little bit the settings and the environment to help it succeed in the edge situations.
I think one important point about adoption is also the resistance that farmers have with completely new technologies. If you think about Monarch, for instance, they're going for fully autonomous tractor, right? And I mean, if you put that in front of a farmer, it's going to say, I'm not going to do such investment right now if I don't know how your solution is working. So there is not a complete trust. And I think in that case, incremental solutions are going to ease adoption in that sense. I mean, if I go to a farmer and they say, okay, I have a kit, I have a solution that is going to help you towards that, that's going to be easy to accept. So adoption can be facilitated by the higher acceptance rate in addition.
Yeah, going all in too soon, investing that much, it's a risky prospect. I want to connect that thought to what you said, Janae, about the business cycle. With 1 year being a business cycle, what is the optimal number to feel comfortable with where you do go all in on a technology? I mean, I don't know the answer, so I'm hoping you guys have some thoughts.
I think farmers are risk adverse and they will dabble their toe in it slowly. They will buy one bit of kit, try it for a year, and keep their tractor in the shed in case it goes wrong. Because if it does go wrong, they're stuffed for a year, and it's a case of not feeding your family for a year. So it's going to be slowly implemented and try it. That's why people like to see their neighbours are trying it first, and they almost want to go in second.
And I would agree, Richard. I think, from our perspective, even trying to find early adopters for technology If they tried it once and it didn't work, and they called it, well, we bled too much because that made the difference into whether I was able to feed my family or not. They don't want to be the first one. They want to see somebody else do it, which makes it difficult. And I know in other industries there are risk takers, but to Richard's point, on the other side of the pond, our farmers are just as risk averse. And I guess I don't have an answer for you, Adam.
No, that's why we're here. I mean, that's why technology companies have such a responsibility to really serve the first adopters so well. Because if that relationship goes wrong, there's 3 other people he talks to.
So I'm going to jump in on that one because I think the technology, it's a very interesting comment about the technology companies. So I'm fully agreeing with Richard and with Janae about the kind of risk. But again, I'm going to point to other industries. Most organizations are risk averse, right? I mean, the technology industry is very different in the sense that there's almost like there's a serious, the kind of notion of a serial entrepreneur, or, started something, failed, and kind of, that's the technology industry because it's venture capital funded, all that kind of stuff. But most other industries do not follow that approach at all. You fail, you lose, you come back maybe a decade later, right? Lots of scars on yourself. So I think from a technology company perspective, particularly large or small technology companies, to your point, Adam, yeah, you have to kind of really help out those early adopters, but make sure they're whole, not just we did a proof of concept, but 18 months later, they're still ramping up to success, right? And, and again, because I look at the technology markets, the way that technology companies, particularly early stage or, one called cloud-based, whatever, they talk about cohorts in terms of revenues. The group of customers they got in their first year, they lead to a certain amount of revenue in year 3. The ones in second year follow. So it's a very different approach because you really think about the ones you got in year 1, they are also still being successful in year 3 of the technology, but not just what they benefited from in year 1, but the compounded effects of what they're seeing in year 2, year 3, year 4. That's where you're going to get the technology, and you're going to get really strong examples and customers talking about the benefits of the technology and the use.
That's a great point.
And I just want to add there, great point, Jason. I think that one of the things that we need to also remember is that one technology probably needs some integration along the value chain for the producer. And it's not going to be one technology that's going to return that ROI or create that value for the customer or for the grower. It could be multiple technologies that need to be tied together. And taking it from that approach on okay, we're going to start with this, but what are the other things that meet your need? And it could be things that the grower doesn't even identify with to be able to leverage and drive the most value and that value creation out of adopting a new technology, and what else can complement it. And I think that it isn't a one-stop solution from a grower perspective. It is how does the robotics collect data, where does it go back to, and how does that integrate into other software platforms that I have or may be looking to have. So I think there's that angle as well.
That's a very good point, and something that we notice from day one from our clients, the ability to integrate multiple solutions and to create a holistic solution. It's not about replacing everything that you already have, but integrated to everything that had. And also, we also see ourselves as enabling other technology and other services to come and build their services based on the things that are already there. We implement communication, we implement data collection efforts, we implement all this infrastructure that will enable, more services that can be provided at lower cost, at easier adoption, and we work very hard on that, on this partnership network with other technology vendors. We're about running our time. So Alexa, last note, please.
I was just going to say, in terms of adoption, we have farms across the US, so you can't get cell phone service in their fields and you can't get internet access. So when they see autonomous or anything to do with technology, they automatically think this is not going to work on my farm because I can't connect to anything. So coming from a startup standpoint, understanding, how can you connect into, not just 5G, but other easy entrance connectivity that they have coming to their farms or might be available is a big factor of seeing the potential that might be there, if they don't have fantastic connectivity across all their farms.
Send them my email. We can help with that as well. Okay, Adam, last notes?
Can I ask Richard? Richard, the question of connectivity is being raised, and particularly in more rural areas. But you said you're just outside of London, so do you have similar things in terms of being close to a metro center?
Exactly. You can drive 5 miles down the road. You go from a full signal to no signal at all. We're actually in the Chiltern Hills, so we've got rolling hills, and you drive over the valley, and you suddenly there's a mast up there, and you get a signal. And they're trying to roll out 4G technology around here, but they've actually decreased the payments to all the landowners to put the masts up. So actually, it's going slowly, and they've kind of slowly shot themselves in the foot with that. So it's happening, but it's slow, and yeah, we're 20 miles west of London, and we got farms we haven't got broadband on, and it's just painful.
Well, thanks
it's
for
coming, but slow.
Thank you.
Yeah, last topic here. We've done a really great job with this stuff, so thank you all for staying on topic and the awesome answers and questions. Legislation and regulation. We see this is kind of the biggest hurdle here. No technology, autonomy, or otherwise gets adopted because a technology company makes a press release. It has to come from the customer, has to come from the industry pushing for it and wanting it. And we really see this as ample opportunity for technology to be adopted because the need is really there. It's a crucial situation. COVID is making things so difficult, and we really would urge people to ask their representatives to make exemptions or just make it easier to try these technologies in a commercialized setting. So any thoughts on that, any ways that can happen? We are all ears. We're willing to help, and we have our contact information. Please connect with us. All right, I think we need to wrap up, so we have to put those in comments or emails, but please feel free to reach out.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you so
Really
much.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Very interesting.